Drawing on Teacher Facunda's concept of bad faith in education, Leonardo's theory on a racial contract, Davis's discovery of segregation and underfunding, and Gonzalez and Portillo's analysis on the policies that popped up after the LA riots, the primary stakeholder, the United Teachers Los Angeles, and secondary stakeholders like George McKenna, challenged the racism in education that exists within the LAUSD by fighting for all students regardless of color. Teacher Vicuna argues that racism in education is often maintained through practices like bad faith and through the denial of inequality. The UTLA challenges these dynamics by protesting and rallying against the unethical practices used to maintain racism. In Teacher Vicunda's article, he explains how the racism that exists in education exists by being maintained through the use of feigned ignorance and through bad faith, which is the refusal to acknowledge the clear proof of racial inequities that are happening in an educational setting. In LA, there are many educational organizations like the LAUSD that refuse to acknowledge the racism that occurs in classrooms in order to save face. According to Teacher Facunda, teachers go through hardships while trying to challenge these racist curriculums being upheld in institutions. Organizations like the UTLA face similar issues when fighting for the fairness for students of all colors when policymakers for the institutions resist the change to protect the hierarchies within the schools. The struggle between the UTLA trying to implement fair treatment in classrooms reflects the same pattern of bad faith, which shows that it isn't just a classroom issue, but rather an issue with the whole entire system. While Leonardo points out that educational systems often uphold a racial contract that mimics racial hierarchies in society, the UTLA rejects this racial contract meant to create a divide between the wealthy and less fortunate by advocating for students of color. According to Leonardo, schools reproduce racial hierarchies by treating whiteness as the standard. This is reflected in LAUSD's courses, tracking, and access gaps that limit opportunities for students of color. The UTLA pushes against these norms by demanding equitable access. The UTLA's work aligns with Leonardo's idea of epistemological traders, which are educators who reject racist systems from within. By resisting discriminatory policies that break the racial contract and expose how the fault line is built into the district's structure. The UTLA's cause is a perfect example of epistemological traders because everything they stand for is opposing the racial contracts that exist not just in education but also society. While Davis claims that the LAUSD continues to underfund schools that have a bigger population of marginalized students, the UTLA constantly challenges these norms of the system that mimic societal hierarchies within the school, with methods like overcrowding and underfunding resources for classrooms. According to Davis, racism operates within the LAUSD through not just any discrimination but rather segregation and underfunding. After the LA riots that happened in 1992, the LAUSD went through many changes, like major demographic shifts. Because of this, the LAUSD continued using patterns of underfunding in schools with high poverty rates. These inequities push students of colors into environments with fewer opportunities and support, ultimately causing them to fail. The UCLA challenges this by demanding smaller classes, improved funding, and fair staffing. Their fight highlights how institutional decisions replicate social hierarchies, revealing the fault line where race and resource allocation collide. While Gonzalez and Portillo's argue that policies like Proposition 187 and 227 had an effect that deepened racial divides by stripping immigrant students of their cultural identities, the UTLA challenged these policies by defending the rights to, for, and education, the inclusion of their cultures, and their rights as immigrants. According to Gonzalez and Portillo's, the results of the 1992 Los Angeles riots made Los Angeles a sort of testing ground for policies that limited race, educational access, and attacked immigrants' immigration status. These policies intensified racial tensions and reinforced discriminatory treatment within LA schools. The UTLA pushed back by supporting bilingual programs and defending immigrant students' rights, directly countering the exclusion these laws created. Their efforts reveal how the fault line also extended to immigration policy and cultural suppression. As a result, Los Angeles not just became a battlefield for politics, but also a place where race and education collide. As a result of these riots, LA was even more divided as it seemed to deepen the racism in the institutions. The UTLA is dedicated to fighting for equal resources and equal education for all students within Los Angeles schools by pushing for the diversity that the LAUSD falsely promised and for the equality of all students of color. The reason the UTLA constantly fight for their students and challenges these racist norms that exist within the educational system is because their teachers see all the inequality, overcrowding of schools, and unfair disciplinary practices that happen within these spaces of learning. All this discrimination and lack of attention for all these students shows just how screwed up it really is for the LA school system. This makes the UTLA's reason to fight more than justified because they're trying to break through the racism and fix what has been broken about the system for years. The goal for the UTLA isn't just to call out the injustices in the educational system, but to create some lasting change in the educational system so that each and every student is valued, supported, and are provided the materials to succeed regardless of ethnicity or background. Despite all the racism in educational systems in LA, the UTLA are actively trying to close this divide in LA areas by actively fighting against the norms that limit students' ability to succeed. But not only opposing the racism in education with what they stand for, but also by taking direct actions like organizing campaigns, rallies, and protesting for fair policies for schools across Los Angeles. The UTLA's efforts for equality goes far beyond just the classroom. Their involvement with families and local groups raises awareness about how racism operates across the district. Their efforts show the issue isn't isolated but widespread and structural. Their actions show how much influence they have across LA by informing the people about the injustices that occur within education and by uniting communities to help fight against it. By banding together, the UTLA show that they are not just all talk and they stand by their words. This supports the thesis by showing the UTLA are actively responding to racial and social divides that exist in LA by taking action for change. Not only are the UTLA the only groups that are fighting for the equality for all students, but former educator and former LAUSD board member George McKenna has also shown that he is capable of fighting for these rights as well for all students. He has shown that an underperforming and violent high school in LA is capable of being turned into a successful college prep school, showing that under the right leadership, a community can be united against racism in education. Despite Washington Prep High School having a reputation of poverty and violence, George McKenna has shown that under the right leadership, it was able to change. George McKenna was able to transform Washington Prep by enforcing accountability and building a culture of support. His work challenges stereotypes about students in marginalized schools lacking ability or motivation. Additionally, his success in reforming the school shows that racism in education isn't about a student's ability, but rather it has to do with the support and belief that is provided. With McKenna's work at Washington Prep High School, McKenna has continued his work at LAUSD as a board member, and by showing that he has a dedication to all the students pursuing education in LA by fighting the racism like inequalities in the structures. As a former LAUSD board member, McKenna's role relates towards confronting racism in education. He primarily focused on breaking through the inequalities that persisted in some LA schools. With his leadership, he showed that a school that was filled with a huge population of minorities was able to perform the same or even better than a school with wealth. With his previous position as a board member, McKenna has fought for similar values to that of the UTLA. His mission of fighting for the equality and better funding of campuses aligns with the UTLA's goal. Together, both the McKenna and the UTLA represent the change necessary to confront the racism that exists in educational structures. Overall, these experiences show that racism in education is an ongoing issue that affects the experiences and futures of all students, while also hindering teachers to accommodate students in underfunded schools across LA. With leaders like George McKenna and organizations like the UTLA that are fighting for equal opportunities for all students, the change necessary to fix the divide in the educational system is possible under the guidance of equal opportunity. The educational opportunities in LA continue to show how racism in education hinders the outcomes of students of color. However, with educators like George McKenna and organizations like the UTLA hosting rallies and protests to call out systemic racism that exists within the system, it is up to all of us to help fight for what's right alongside those people who care deeply for our students. The efforts between McKenna and the UTLA to confront the problems at hand connects back to the thesis by showing us that to fix the discrimination and inequality in the educational system in LA, confronting it and having it call a call to action like protests and rallies is necessary in order for there to be any change at all. The effort they put in to fix the divide between the students and in the educational setting is purely the refusal to give up on all the students regardless of background, and also the fight for a more just system for everybody.